The street falls silent as police cars block the road, sirens still echoing in the air. Officers surround a parked car where Chuck Norris's family sits frozen in fear. One cop slams his hand against the glass, shouting that they need to learn their place. The children shrink back, their mother trembling as strangers watch in shock. Arrogance fills the officers' faces, blind to the truth standing a few feet away. Because the man they are provoking is no ordinary father. He is Chuck Norris, a Delta Force legend. If this was your family, would you stay silent or fight back? Chuck Norris walked beside his family on a quiet afternoon, carrying simple shopping bags. His wife moved close to him, her calm smile hiding a flicker of unease that always lingered when authority figures were near. Their teenage son joked about school, his laughter carrying the hope of living in a world free from judgment. For a moment, peace felt possible. Chuck blended easily into the scene, dressed in plain clothes, his posture relaxed, his presence quiet. To any stranger, he seemed like any other man. Yet the faint scars on his hands and the weight in his gaze hinted at a life forged in fire and discipline. The neighborhood seemed ordinary, with trimmed lawns and clean streets, but there was an edge. Neighbors glanced through curtains, some whispering, deciding silently who belonged and who did not. The peace shattered in an instant. A police cruiser pulled across the road, cutting off their car. Two officers stepped out with swagger, young and hungry for power. Their eyes burned with arrogance, their hands already reaching for authority they believed was theirs to display. The family's normal day was about to twist into something darker. The officers moved with a swagger, their boots striking the pavement as if every step was a declaration of power. They stopped in front of the car and peered inside, eyes narrowing with suspicion that had no reason behind it. One of them pointed at Chuck's wife and demanded in a sharp tone that she step out. His words were not a request. They carried the weight of arrogance, the kind that feeds on fear. Chuck's wife obeyed, calm but anxious. Holding her purse close, she handed over her ID with a steady hand. The officer barely glanced at it before tossing it back toward her, asking for more proof, as though her existence alone was a problem. The teenage son stood beside her, tall but still young, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. He had grown up listening to his parents teach him respect, but now he saw none in return. When the boy answered a question too slowly, one of the officers shoved him in the chest, calling him disrespectful. He stumbled backward, catching himself, his face flushing with humiliation. Chuck's wife rushed to his side, her voice breaking as she asked the officers to stop. Instead of listening, they laughed, the sound cruel and dismissive, like predators circling prey. The neighbors across the street whispered, some peeking from behind curtains, others frozen in place. Not one dared to intervene. Their silence added weight to the injustice, turning the family's humiliation into a public spectacle. Inside the car, the family's groceries still sat in bags, a reminder of how ordinary the day had begun. Now it felt shattered, replaced by fear. Chuck stood a few feet away, his arms crossed, his stance relaxed but his eyes unblinking. Every insult, every shove, every arrogant laugh pressed against his patience. His silence carried a warning, though the officers were too blinded by their authority to notice. What happens when authority forgets justice? The answer was waiting, and it stood quietly among them. The officers pressed closer, their voices dripping with mockery as they circled Chuck's family. One leaned in toward the teenage boy, smirking as he accused him of resisting. The threat of arrest hung heavy in the air, designed to crush the boy's spirit. Chuck straightened slowly, shoulders squaring, his presence shifting in an instant. The quiet father who had stood humbled on the roadside seemed to vanish. What emerged was something different, something far greater. His back was rigid, his stance calculated, his breathing measured. Every movement screamed discipline. This was not the body of an ordinary man. This was a soldier prepared for war. The officers laughed uneasily, trying to mask the ripple of doubt crawling up their spines. Yet one of them, older than the rest, a flicker of recognition flashed in his eyes as he studied Chuck's stance. The controlled breathing, the scars hidden by his sleeves. Realization spread across his face like ice water. His lips parted in shock, but no warning came in time. What happens when arrogance collides with Delta Force fury? The answer was standing right in front of them, ready to strike. The first officer reached for his weapon, but Chuck moved faster than the eye could follow. In a blur, His hand twisted the gun free and sent it clattering across the pavement. Before the man could react, Chuck's strike dropped him to the ground, gasping for air. Another officer lunged, swinging wild. Chuck stepped aside with calm precision. His counter a sharp, controlled movement that folded the man down hard, his arrogance shattered with a single blow. The sound of bodies hitting the ground echoed through the street. Gasps rose from the crowd. Neighbors leaned forward, phones lifted, recording every second. Whispers spread like fire. That is Chuck Norris. The name alone changed everything. The confidence draining from the remaining officers was visible, their smirks dissolving into wide-eyed fear. They froze, hands trembling, the bravado that had filled the air moments ago gone. Chuck's movements slow, deliberate, his control absolute. He restrained them, but not with rage. Each motion was measured, purposeful, the power undeniable, but the violence withheld. His voice cut through the stunned silence, cold and steady. Power means nothing when it is used to abuse. Real strength protects. The words hung heavy, sinking deeper than any strike. Neighbors began stepping out from porches and doors, their voices rising, hands clapping. For the first time, the silence of fear was broken by courage. The street filled with applause, support, and the undeniable truth that justice had turned. On the ground, the officers groaned, their uniforms stained with humiliation, their cruelty reflected back at them by every camera lens pointed their way. They had threatened an innocent family, and now they lay stripped of arrogance, powerless before the men they had tried to break. The street slowly returned to silence. Chuck wrapped his arms around his wife and son, holding them close. The fear that had clouded their faces was gone, replaced by pride and relief. Neighbors stood taller now, watching not a legend, but a father who had defended his family with unshakable strength. Their respect was not for his name, but for his courage. The officers crawled away, their arrogance stripped, their power exposed as empty. The crowd no longer feared them. All eyes stayed on Chuck as his words lingered in the air like a final judgment. True authority is not taken by force. It is earned by protecting, never by oppressing. Justice was served. But if you had been in his place, would you have shown mercy or delivered punishment?